For 900 years, the Orion Accord believed it had mastered the stars. Its 7 founding species ruled the inner galaxy from towers of glass, gravity-forged metal, and artificial moons that shone brighter than real ones. They had fleets that moved faster than thought, shields that could bend solar fire, and war doctrines so old they were treated almost like religion. Then the dark between the stars began to move. At first, the Accord called it a sensor error. A mining station on the edge of Varan space went silent. Then a patrol fleet vanished without firing a distress beacon. Then an entire moon, a dead gray rock that had orbited its planet for 3 billion years, cracked open like an egg and disappeared into a cloud of black living dust. That was when the Accord gave the enemy a name. The Hollow Swarm. No one knew where it came from. It did not communicate. It did not conquer territory. It did not take prisoners. It arrived in silent clouds of millions of needle-shaped organisms, each one smaller than a human finger, each one capable of eating through shields, hulls, satellites, cities, and flesh. The Accord's perfect weapons failed. Their plasma beams passed through the swarm and struck empty space. Their shield walls overloaded because the Hollow did not attack from one direction. It surrounded everything and ate from every angle. Their battle AIs collapsed trying to predict an enemy that had no strategy, no fear, no command structure, and no sense of self-preservation. For the first time in centuries, the inner races felt something they had almost forgotten. Terror. That was when they turned to humanity. Humans were not members of the High Circle. We were not ancient. We were not elegant. We had entered interstellar space only 160 years earlier, dragging our loud engines, ugly freighters, and stubborn little colonies behind us. To the Accord, we were useful but primitive. We still used kinetic weapons. We still trained soldiers in mud, smoke, hunger, and darkness. We still built manual controls into our ships because some old engineer on Earth had once said, "If a machine cannot be kicked until it works, it is not finished." The Accord had laughed at that. Until the Hollow Swarm reached their capital worlds. I was aboard the UES Iron Saint when the message came. Every human ship in the Western Front received it at the same time. A formal request from High Speaker Lurith of the Orion Accord. They called us brave. They called us adaptable. They called us essential allies. They promised Earth a permanent seat in the High Circle. They promised open access to Accord energy cores, medical regeneration banks, and jump gate engineering. They promised our colonies protection. They promised our dead would be honored among theirs. All we had to do was fight where their fleets could not. Admiral Elena Cross stood on the bridge as the message played. She was 58 years old, short, broad-shouldered, with silver hair tied back and a face that had survived too many wars to be impressed by pretty words. When the broadcast ended, nobody spoke. Outside the viewport, the Hollow Swarm covered half the stars. Finally, the Admiral looked at us and said, "Well, they asked nicely." A few people laughed. Not because it was funny. Because we were afraid, and humans have always laughed when fear stands too close. Then Admiral Cross turned toward the tactical display. "Load the railguns," she said. "Wake every Marine. Tell engineering I want every manual turret crewed in 10 minutes. The weapons officer swallowed. "Admiral, Accord Command says their plasma systems are useless against the swarm." Cross nodded. "I know. Then what are we firing?" The Admiral looked out at the black living cloud coming to eat another world. "Metal," she said. "Very fast." That was how humanity joined the war. Not as rulers. Not as equals. As the desperate answer the galaxy called only when perfection failed. The war lasted 6 years. Later, Accord historians would call it the Hollow Crisis, as if it had been a difficult season, a tragic but manageable chapter in galactic history. Humans called it the Grinder, because that was what it did. It took ships, colonies, soldiers, families, fuel, sleep, faith, and every soft thing a person carried inside them, and it ground them down until only the hard parts remained. The Hollow Swarm did not fight like an army. It flowed like weather. It came in black clouds across moons, shipyards, trade lanes, refugee routes, and hospital stations. If one cloud was burned away, another arrived. If a hive cluster was shattered, its fragments became smaller clusters. If a planet shield held for 1 hour, the swarm spent that hour eating the atmosphere generators from below. The Accord's fleet stayed behind their polished shield lines and issued strategic commands from safe gravity wells. Human ships went forward. Always forward. The Iron Saint lost half its armor in the first year. By the second, its port side looked like it had been chewed by a god with broken teeth. By the third, we had replaced 3 plasma conduits with Earth-made steam pressure systems because no one had spare Accord parts left and Chief Engineer Mara Voss refused to let a ship die from being too fancy. We fought with railguns until the barrels glowed. We fired tungsten rods, scrap metal, asteroid or broken drone frames, and once during the siege of Cauldron Gate, An entire cargo container filled with kitchen knives because it was the only metal left in the bay. The Accord called it barbaric. Then they watched the hollow swarm bleed. Human Marines became legends in places they could not pronounce. They fought inside shattered stations with magnetic boots and shotguns. They sealed hull breaches with their own emergency foam while the black swarm scratched against the other side. They carried alien children through corridors where the lights had already failed. Every Accord world had a story like that. A human ship arriving late but still arriving. A human soldier holding a door. A human engineer restarting a dead reactor with wire, curses, and a tool that looked too old to be legal. And every time we saved them, the Accord thanked us. Publicly. High Speaker Lurith appeared on the galactic broadcast every month with his silver robes and sorrowful eyes, praising Earth's courage. He spoke of unity, of sacrifice, of the future seat humanity would hold in the high circle when the war was won. On Earth, people believed him. They had to. Belief was cheaper than grief. By the 5th year, Earth had rationed half its industrial output into the war. Colonies sent oxygen, food, pilots, medics, children barely old enough to serve. Mars emptied 2 shipyards. Luna converted its universities into military hospitals. Old nations that had hated each other for centuries built weapons side by side because the Dark did not care about flags. We lost millions. The Accord lost monuments. That was the difference no speech could hide. During the final offensive at the Maw Nebula, every human fleet was ordered into the swarm's center while Accord battleships formed a containment ring behind us. They said only human tactics could break the core. They said our adaptability made us uniquely suited for close assault. They said the galaxy would remember. Admiral Cross listened to the order in silence. Then she looked around the bridge of the Iron Saint at the burned panels, the patched walls, the crew held together by caffeine and stubbornness. They want us in the teeth again, Captain Reyes muttered. Cross nodded. That's where the work is. So we went. For 19 hours, the Maw Nebula burned white with human gunfire. When it ended, the Hollow Queen was dead. The swarm broke apart like ash in solar wind. Across the galaxy, Accord worlds rang their victory bells. On the bridge of the Iron Saint, no one cheered. We were too tired. Too many chairs were empty. Too many names had already been sent home in sealed data packets. But we believed it had meant something. We believed the promises would be kept. That was our last innocent mistake. Victory smelled like burnt metal. That was what I remember most. Not the bells from the Accord worlds. Not the thousands of messages flooding every open channel. Not the speeches from leaders who had never seen the inside of a breached hull. Just the smell inside the Iron Saint, hot wiring, old smoke, recycled blood, and the bitter chemical sting of emergency sealant drying across the walls. We had won. The Hollow Queen was dead. The Maw Nebula was clearing. Across the tactical display, the remaining swarm clusters were breaking apart, drifting without direction, no longer a hunger with a mind behind it. On the bridge, Admiral Elena Cross stood with one hand resting on the cracked command rail. No one asked her to sit. No one wanted to be the first person to admit their legs were shaking. Captain Reyes wiped ash from his cheek and stared at the forward screen. Accord fleet is moving, he said. I looked up from the damage board. The containment ring was closing. At first, I thought they were coming to escort us home. Maybe to offer medical aid. Maybe to broadcast the ceremony they had promised for years. The High Circle had sworn that when the final battle ended, humanity would stand beside them as equals. Then the Accord ships locked weapons. The bridge went silent. Not confused. Silent. There is a difference. Admiral Cross straightened. Open a channel. The screen flickered, and High Speaker Lurith appeared in silver robes untouched by war. His face carried the careful sadness of a politician who had practiced mourning in a mirror. Admiral Cross, he said. Humanity has performed beyond all projections. Cross did not blink. That sounds like the beginning of a sentence I won't enjoy. Lurith lowered his eyes. The hollow threat has ended. The emergency alliance is therefore dissolved. Captain Reyes took one step forward. What? Lurith continued as if he had not heard him. During the conflict, the High Circle conducted a full assessment of human military behavior. Your species displays extreme adaptation under pressure, rapid militarization, high reproductive recovery, and a cultural tolerance for catastrophic loss that the Accord considers destabilizing. My hands went cold. Cross's voice stayed flat. We saved your worlds. Yes, Lurith said softly. That is precisely why we cannot allow you unrestricted access to them. The tactical display flashed red. Across the sector, Accord ships were surrounding every surviving human vessel. Lurith lifted one thin hand. All human warships will power down immediately. Your colonies will be placed under Accord supervision. Earth will retain local autonomy inside its home system only. Your jump access will be restricted for the safety of galactic civilization. Captain Reyes laughed once. It sounded broken. You promised us a seat. We promised consideration, Lurith said. That is not what you said. That is what was written. Then we understood. The promise had never been a promise. It had been wording. Admiral Cross leaned closer to the screen. If you do this, there is no alliance left. Lurith's expression did not change. There has not been an alliance for some time, Admiral. Only necessity. Before Cross could answer, the first pulse hit. The Iron Saint screamed. Not a sound from outside. Ships do not carry sound through vacuum, but from inside, from every system dying at once. Lights went black, then red. Consoles sparked. The gravity dipped hard enough to throw 3 officers against the floor. Report. Cross barked. Main drive dead, someone shouted. Shields collapsing. Railgun grid offline. Medical decks losing power. Chief Engineer Maravasa's voice cut through the chaos from engineering. Admiral, the Accord energy cores are locking us out. It's not damage. It's command override. Then another officer yelled the words that turned betrayal into something colder. Their medical nanites are transmitting through our network. The ones they gave us after Cauldron Gate. They're rewriting access from inside. For 6 years they had watched us bleed. For 6 years they had smiled and handed us gifts. For 6 years they had been building the cage while we fought the monster at their door. On the screen, Lurith looked almost regretful. Do not resist. You are fortunate we are allowing Earth to survive. The channel closed. Outside, the Accord fleet began moving away, leaving us crippled among the bones of the enemy we had destroyed for them. No one spoke. Then Admiral Cross turned toward the dead forward screen. Her face had gone very still. Not angry. Not afraid. So. And every human on that bridge knew the Accord had made a mistake larger than war. For almost 1 minute after the channel closed, the bridge of the Iron Saint made only broken sounds. Sparks snapped behind the navigation wall. Somewhere below deck, an emergency bulkhead slammed shut. The gravity stuttered once, hard enough to make my stomach rise, then settled into a weak, uneven pull that felt less like artificial gravity and more like a tired hand trying to hold us down. The Accord fleet was already leaving. That was the insult. They had not stayed to watch us die. They did not think we were worth the time. Captain Reyes pushed himself up from the floor, blood running from a cut above his eyebrow. Orders, Admiral? Admiral Elena Cross did not answer immediately. She walked to the forward viewport. The screen was dead, but the armored glass still showed the stars beyond it. Out there, the silver shapes of the Accord battleships were becoming smaller, cleaner, safer. Behind us floated the wreckage of the Hollow Swarm. In front of us drifted the allies who had turned betrayal into policy. Chief Engineer Maravas came onto the bridge through the manual hatch because the lift had stopped working. Her face was streaked with grease, one sleeve burned almost to the elbow. They killed everything pretty, she said. Cross turned. Pretty? The Accord cores. The plasma grid. The smart relays. The medical nanite network. Anything they built, anything they touched, anything that asks permission before working. Mara wiped her hands on her trousers. All dead or locked. And the ugly systems? For the first time since the attack, Mara smiled. Small. Dangerous. The ugly systems never listened to them. Cross nodded once. Show me. Mara led her to the rear of the bridge, past dead consoles and officers trying to reroute power through cracked panels. At the back wall was a gray emergency cabinet sealed under dust and old warning labels. Most of us had forgotten it existed. Mara kicked the latch twice. The cabinet opened. Inside were physical switches, copper wire spools, paper circuit maps, flare pistols, hand-crank chargers, vacuum-rated toolkits, and one ancient radio unit with knobs instead of a screen. It looked ridiculous. It looked beautiful. The Accord had disabled every advanced system they understood. They had not touched the things they considered too primitive to matter. Mara pulled the radio out and set it on the navigation table. No long-range quantum comms, she said. No encrypted Accord bands. But this thing can still scream across shortwave if we boost it through the hull antenna. Range? Reyes asked. Bad. How bad? Human bad. Mara shrugged. Meaning ugly, unreliable, full of static, and probably enough. Admiral Cross reached into the cabinet and removed a small object wrapped in cloth. It was a compass. Old brass. Scratched glass. A relic from Earth's oceans, older than spaceflight, older than the Accord's opinion of us. She turned it once in her palm. My grandfather carried this on a fishing boat, she said quietly. No satellites. No AI. Just stars, weather, and stubbornness. Then she looked at us. The bridge had gone still again, but this time the silence was different. Not shock. Focus. They took the jump cores, Cross said. They took the plasma grid. They took the pretty gifts they gave us because they thought the gifts made us strong. She placed the compass on the dead command console. They forgot we were dangerous before we met them. Mara bent over the radio. Give me 5 minutes and every surviving human ship within ugly range will hear us. You have 3, Cross said. Mara grinned wider. Now you're flirting. Around the bridge, people began moving. Not panicking. Not mourning. Working. A gunner tore open a floor panel and started pulling copper by hand. 2 navigation officers unfolded paper star charts from an emergency tube. Marines arrived with manual rifles and ammunition crates that had not been opened since the first year of the war. Someone began distributing glow sticks because the lights were still failing. The Iron Saint was crippled. But it was not dead. A few minutes later, the old radio crackled. Static filled the bridge like rain. Then a voice came through. This is U.S. Mason Bell. We are dark but breathing. Another voice followed. Colony tender Blue Mercy. Engines dead. Crew alive. Then another. Destroyer Cape Wrath. Manual batteries online. One by one the dead answered. Admiral Cross leaned toward the microphone. This is Admiral Elena Cross of the Iron Saint. Accord Command has betrayed humanity. All surviving vessels are to cut alien systems, go dark, and switch to manual command. She paused. Outside, the Accord fleet vanished into jump light. Cross smiled for the first time that day. They took our future, she said. So we are going to repossess theirs. The first thing humans needed was air. Not glory. Not revenge. Air. The Accord had not simply disabled our ships. They had stripped us with surgical cruelty. Fuel reserves locked behind foreign command keys. Medical banks frozen. Long-range food printers shut down by license revocation. Oxygen farms cut from the supply network. They had left us alive but only barely. That was their second mistake. A dead enemy is simple. A desperate enemy becomes creative. For 2 days, the surviving human fleet drifted through the dark beyond the Maw Nebula, silent to every Accord scanner. No plasma signatures. No quantum traffic. No bright engine trails. Just broken ships pretending to be corpses among the ruins of the war we had won for them. Inside the Iron Saint, we worked by glow stick and emergency lamps. Chief Engineer Mara Voss had turned Deck 4 into a scrapyard temple. Officers carried dead consoles to her. Marines brought broken drone frames. Medics donated surgical tubing. Cooks stripped heating coils from the galley. Someone dragged in 3 old exercise bikes from the crew gym, and within an hour Mara had them wired into a battery crank station. Congratulations, she told us. Human civilization has returned to sweating for electricity. No one complained. Admiral Cross stood over a paper star chart spread across the tactical table. Red pencil marks circled every Accord supply point within ugly range. Most were impossible. Too guarded. Too far. Too dependent on jump drives we no longer trusted. Then Mara tapped one dirty finger on a small moon orbiting the gas giant Reth. Here. Captain Reyes leaned closer. Oxygen refinery? Old one, Mara said. Before the Accord upgraded their inner worlds. They use it as emergency backup now. Reyes frowned. It has automated defense nets. Against missiles, plasma, cyber intrusion, and engine signatures. Mara smiled. Not against falling. That was how Operation Breath began. We did not fly to Reth's moon. Flying was for people with working engines. Instead, we used the gas giant. 3 damaged human ships linked themselves together with tow cables and fired their remaining maneuvering thrusters for exactly 9 seconds. That was all the fuel we could spare. After that, gravity did the work. For 16 hours, we fell around Reth in total darkness. No lights. No shields. No active sensors. A fleet of silent wrecks using mathematics older than the Accord itself. The refinery moon filled the viewport slowly, a gray-white rock wrapped in metal rings and oxygen storage towers. Accord defense drones floated around it like silver insects. They scanned for engine heat. They scanned for plasma charge. They scanned for digital intrusion. They did not scan for 3 dead ships dropping out of the dark on a gravity curve with their hulls cold and their crews holding their breath. Range? Cross asked. Close enough to do something stupid, Reyes said. Good. Mara gave the order. We fired anchors. Not missiles. Anchors. Massive iron hooks launched from cargo rails, trailing braided steel cables made from torn lift shafts and old hull braces. They struck the refinery ring with deep metallic thunder, biting into the outer frame. The defense drones hesitated. Their logic cores searched for an attack profile. There was none. No energy weapon. No hack. No explosive. Just humans throwing hooks at a moon. By the time the drones decided hooks were hostile, the Marines were already moving. I crossed first with Squad 7, clipped to the cable, boots locked, rifle strapped to my chest. There was no elegant boarding tube. No glowing assault bridge. We crawled across open space like angry insects, hand over hand, while the gas giant burned red beneath us. The Accord guards inside the refinery were not ready. They expected alarms from computers. They did not expect humans cutting through the wall with chemical torches and entering through a maintenance exhaust pipe. The first guard raised a pulse rifle. Sergeant Vale hit him with a fire extinguisher. Not fired. The guard dropped like a sack of wet laundry. Primitive, Vale muttered, stepping over him. But reliable. Within 12 minutes we had the oxygen towers. Within 20, Mara had control of the compressors. Within 30, the Iron Saint was filling its tanks with stolen air. But Admiral Cross did not stop there. Detach the reserve ring, she ordered. Mara looked up from her console. The whole ring. They tried to leave humanity gasping, Cross said. I want enough air to sing. So we took it. The refinery screamed as its emergency reserve ring tore free from the moon, dragged by 3 broken human ships and a dozen improvised cables. Accord drones swarmed behind us, but Mara vented pure oxygen into their sensor paths and blinded their tracking long enough for us to disappear into the shadow of Wrath. When the Accord response fleet arrived, they found the refinery gutted, the reserve ring gone, and one message welded into the outer hull with a cutting torch. Thanks for the breath. We'll be back for the rest. Back aboard the Iron Saint, the vents came alive for the first time in days. Cold, clean air moved across the bridge. People cried quietly. Admiral Cross closed her eyes, breathed once, and opened them again. Now, she said, we can work. Air kept us alive. It did not make us free. By the 4th day after the betrayal, the human fleet had oxygen, emergency power, and enough stolen refinery equipment to keep our crews breathing for months. But we still had no stable fuel network, no legal trade access, no recognized territory outside Earth, and no way to buy what we needed without stepping into an Accord market that had already declared our currency invalid. The Orion Accord had not only tried to trap our ships. They had tried to erase our right to exist beyond our own system. Every human account in the inner galaxy had been frozen. Every colony contract was under review. Every repair dock suddenly required Accord clearance. The same officials who had thanked us for saving their children now stamped our people as restricted assets. Admiral Cross read the notice once. Then she handed it to Chief Engineer Mara Voss. Mara read it and snorted. They froze our money. Yes, Cross said. That's rude. Can you unfreeze it? No. Captain Reyes looked up. No. Mara folded the notice and tucked it into her pocket. I can't unfreeze money inside an Accord ledger system. Their security is too deep. Too many biometric locks, quantum signatures, legal mirrors, all that shiny nonsense. Cross waited. Mara smiled. But I know where they keep the paper. That was how we found out about the Vault of First Claim. It orbited Namaris, the Accord's financial moon, a polished sphere of white stone and gold transmission towers. Inside it were the original ownership seals for every mining belt, shipyard, energy corridor, and colony lease registered under the Orion Accord. Digital records were convenient. But Accord law was old, older than their computers, older than half their species' current governments. The physical seal remained the highest proof of ownership. Whoever held the first claim could challenge everything built on top of it. The Accord trusted the vault completely. That was their mistake. They protected it against hackers, teleport breaches, plasma drills, identity theft, gene spoofing, and AI corruption. They did not protect it against librarians. 3 human civilian ships approached Namaris under false distress flags, carrying war archive preservation staff, from a neutral academic order that had technically existed since before humanity joined the war. The uniforms were real. The credentials were real. The order itself had been founded by an old human historian 2 days earlier and registered through an abandoned Accord education portal no one had updated in 70 years. Accord bureaucracy accepted the application. That was the beautiful thing about old empires. They believed paperwork more than people. I entered the Vault of First Claim wearing gray scholar robes, carrying a stack of preservation cases and a face that looked bored enough to be harmless. Mara walked beside me with her hair pinned up and a scanner in her hand. Behind us came 6 Marines disguised as document handlers. The vault guards barely looked at us. Purpose? One asked. Emergency war damage archival duplication, Mara said. The guard blinked slowly. Authorized by? Mara handed him a printed form. He scanned the seal. It passed. Of course it passed. We had printed the seal from a captured oxygen refinery maintenance license and renamed the department. Inside, the vault was magnificent. Millions of physical claim rods floated in gravity-stabilized shelves, each one glowing with legal authority. Entire worlds represented by metal no longer than a human finger. Mara whispered, "This is the most expensive junk drawer in history. We did not steal everything. That would have triggered alarms. We stole the important things. Shipyard access seals. Fuel corridor deeds. Emergency logistics bonds. And one small black rod labeled Human Expeditionary War Contribution Escrow." Captain Reyes held it up. "They had an escrow account for our reward." Mara's smile vanished. "They were never going to give it to us." "No," I said. "They were going to hold it until we were harmless." We replaced each stolen claim rod with a perfect weighted replica made from melted ration tins and printer resin. The vault sensors approved the mass. The guards approved our exit. The bureaucracy approved our departure. 6 hours later, every screen in Accord space displayed Admiral Cross. She stood on the bridge of the Iron Saint, holding the black claim rod between two fingers. "By your own financial law," she said calmly, "Earth is now calling in unpaid war debt." Then the next screen appeared. Shipyard titles. Fuel access bonds. Military repair liens. Emergency compensation clauses. The Accord had promised us everything. They had written it down. They had simply assumed humans would die before collecting. Cross looked into the camera. "You froze our accounts," she said. "So we found the originals." Across the galaxy, Accord banks locked themselves into review mode. Shipyards refused high-circle commands. Fuel depots demanded ownership verification. Insurance AIs began calculating 6 years of unpaid human combat labor. High Speaker Lurith tried to issue a denial. His own financial system marked the denial as disputed property. On the Iron Saint, Mara leaned over the comm and added one short message before cutting the broadcast. "Payment is overdue. Interest starts now." The Accord answered our invoice with warships. That was predictable. Old empires do not enjoy being built by the people they tried to erase. 24 hours after Admiral Cross broadcast Earth's claim against the Orion Accord, High Speaker Lurith sent the 7th Radiant Fleet to end what he called human financial terrorism. It was a beautiful phrase. Very official. Very polished. It sounded better than panic. The 7th Radiant Fleet was the pride of the Accord. 31 white gold dreadnoughts with mirror shields, smart plasma lances, and command AIs old enough to have their own ceremonial titles. Each ship could turn a continent into glass. Each captain had been trained in elegant long-range warfare, where enemies appeared on sensors, exchanged formal warnings, and died at respectful distances. They came to the Reth Shadow Belt expecting broken human ships. They found nothing. No fleet. No heat signatures. No distress signals. No stolen oxygen ring. Just cold rocks, dead metal fragments, and the quiet wreckage left behind by the Hollow War. On board the Accord flagship Radiant Law, Admiral Severin gave the order to scan again. The answer remained the same. Empty space. That was when the rocks began to move. Not all of them. Only the ugly ones. The Accord sensors saw frozen debris, cracked engine shells, carbonized chunks, fragments of destroyed human hulls. Their battle AIs labeled them non-hostile because they had no engine burn, no active weapons, no energy signature. They did not understand compressed air. From inside a frozen shell the size of a cargo pod, I heard Sergeant Vale whisper over the wired line. "On my mark." My hands tightened around the manual release bar. Around me, 6 Marines breathed slowly inside insulated boarding suits patched together from mining gear, old vacuum armor, and thermal blankets. We had been floating dead for 9 hours, hidden inside ice-packed salvage pods, waiting for the Accord fleet to drift close enough. "Mark," Vale said. I pulled the bar. A puff of compressed gas kicked us forward. No flame. No heat. No electronic guidance. Just pressure, momentum, and human stupidity weaponized into strategy. We struck the underside of the Radiant Law with a sound I felt in my teeth. Magnetic clamps bit the hull. The Accord armor was too strong for drills, too advanced for cutting lasers, too layered for plasma torches. So Mara had given us something simpler. Ceramic frost wedges. We packed them into the seams of an outer maintenance panel and released liquid nitrogen from a cracked medical tank. The metal contracted. The seam opened a fraction. Then Vale swung a hydraulic rescue hammer, the kind firefighters used on Earth before starships existed. The panel snapped inward. "Doors open," he said. We climbed into the most advanced warship in the Accord. Through a maintenance duct. The first Accord crewman we met had 4 eyes, ceremonial armor, and absolutely no idea what to do with a human covered in frost dropping from the ceiling. Vale hit him with a stun baton. "Sorry," he said. "Boarding inspection." Then the corridor filled with smoke. Not toxic gas. Not nanoweapon fog. Smoke. Thick, gray, cheap, chemical smoke from emergency canisters older than some colonies. The Accord soldiers panicked. Their helmets tried to identify it, classify it, filter it, negotiate with it. Human Marines simply lowered their goggles and moved. We took Deck 7 in 4 minutes. Deck 6 in 9. The bridge in 17. We did not kill the pilots. Admiral Cross had been clear about that. Ships are useful, she said. Pilots are manuals that complain. So we zip-tied officers to their own command chairs, launched escape crews in life pods, and let Mara's stolen maintenance drones crawl into the command core. She did not hack the ship. She physically rewired it. Tiny human-controlled repair crawlers pulled Accord command fibers loose and connected them to a box made from refinery parts, copper wire, and an Earth keyboard missing 3 keys. Across the Shadow Belt the same thing was happening. One by one the 7th Radiant Fleet stopped answering Accord command. Their white-gold running lights flickered. Then changed. Human orange. Admiral Severin, now locked inside an escape pod, watched through the tiny viewport as his own flagship turned slowly toward open space. An hour later, High Speaker Lurith received a transmission. Admiral Cross sat in the command chair of the Radiant Law, one boot resting on the polished floor, the old brass compass hanging from her neck. Speaker Lurith, she said, thank you for your payment. Behind her, 30 stolen dreadnoughts aligned in human formation. You still owe interest. The Accord could survive losing ships. That was what High Speaker Lurith told the High Circle after the 7th Radiant Fleet vanished under human control. His voice shook only once, and even then he hid it by turning away from the broadcast lens. We still have worlds, he said. We still have population. We still have industry. Humanity has stolen weapons, but weapons alone do not build civilization. He was right. So Admiral Cross decided to take civilization next. Not by bombing cities. Not by starving children. Humans had bled too much in the Hollow War to become the kind of monster the Accord claimed we were. Instead, we targeted the one thing every advanced Accord world depended on so completely that they no longer noticed it existed. Comfort. The Accord had not cooked food by hand in centuries. Their cities were fed by nutrient lattice hubs, continent-sized systems that pulled minerals, water and energy from underground reservoirs and printed perfect meals for billions of citizens. Every plate was balanced, clean, elegant, and flavor-adjusted to the genetic preferences of each species. No dirt. No pests. No spoiled grain. No smoke. No hunger. Perfect systems. Perfect weakness. The largest hub was on Velmora, a garden world with violet oceans and silver forests, where the Accord grew nothing because growing things was considered primitive. Food arrived from machines. Machines were maintained by machines. Citizens pressed icons and received dinner. Chief Engineer Mara Voss stared at the hub schematics and laughed so hard she had to sit down. They built a galaxy on vending machines, she said. Captain Reyes frowned. Can we shut them down? Of course. Can we do it without hurting civilians? Mara's smile sharpened. We're not going to stop the food. We're going to make it human. That was how Operation Dinner Bell began. We did not send dreadnoughts to Velmora. Too obvious. We sent sanitation barges. During the Hollow War, human fleets had used ugly waste carriers to clean battle zones, remove contaminated debris, and haul biological samples to quarantine stations. The Accord ignored them because no one important ever looks closely at garbage. Inside those garbage barges we carried soil. Earth soil. Rich, ugly, microbe-filled dirt from farms in Kansas, Punjab, Kenya, Brazil, and old village gardens that had survived droughts, floods, and human stupidity for thousands of years. We also carried seeds. Fast-growing beans. Potatoes. Chili peppers. Yeast cultures. Mushrooms. Harmless insects used for pollination. Nothing lethal. Nothing that would poison a world. Just life. Messy life. The barges entered Velmora's atmosphere under old cleanup permits the Accord had forgotten to cancel. At midnight local time, they released thousands of small seed pods across the nutrient hub's external cooling fields. Within 6 hours roots found warmth. Within 12 vines entered ventilation grids. Within 18 yeast blooms confused purity sensors. By morning, the perfect nutrient lattice was producing emergency alerts in 17 languages. The Accord technicians panicked. Their machines detected biology where biology was not supposed to be. The system demanded agricultural classification codes that no living technician on Velmora had ever used. Cleaning drones sprayed sterilizer on Mint. The Mint grew back angrier. Then Mara placed the service call. Her voice, filtered through an old Accord maintenance channel, sounded calm and official. Biopattern irregularity detected. Human agricultural recovery team dispatched. Please evacuate processing staff until soil event is contained. They obeyed instantly. That was the problem with perfect order. It made disobedience unimaginable. We walked into the largest food hub in the inner galaxy wearing white hazard suits and carrying toolboxes full of pepper seeds. By the time Accord security realized the recovery team was human, Mara had already rewritten the flavor banks. Not the nutrition. The food remained safe. Healthy even. But every meal printed across Velmora for the next 24 hours came with one mandatory human setting. Spicy. Not painful enough to kill. Just enough to remind the galaxy that Earth had never produced anything gently. High Speaker Lurith was in emergency session when his dinner tray arrived. The machine printed his favorite silverleaf pudding. It looked perfect. He took one bite. His eyes watered immediately. Across every Accord world connected to Velmora's hub, citizens coughed, shouted, drank water, cursed their leaders, and discovered that human chili was not a flavor. It was an event. Then Admiral Cross appeared on the public food network, calmly eating a bowl of stew. Speaker Lurith, she said, your people will not starve. We are not you. She held up a small red pepper. But if you want flavor control restored, Earth requires 3 things. Open medical corridors, recognition of human colonies, and the return of every civilian transport you seized. She smiled slightly. Until then, dinner will have character. By sunset, the Accord still had food. But comfort was gone. And for the first time, billions of citizens began asking why their perfect leaders could not protect them from soup. The Accord's greatest strength had always been unity. 7 species. 7 governments. 7 histories tied together by one shining system of law, communication, and shared command. That was what High Speaker Lurith told his people after the food hub disaster on Velmora. Humanity can steal ships, he said. Humanity can disrupt comfort. But they cannot break the bond that holds the Orion Accord together. Admiral Cross watched the broadcast from the bridge of the stolen Radiant Law. Chief Engineer Mara Voss stood beside her, eating something crunchy from a ration pouch. They always say things like that right before we break the thing, Mara said. Cross looked at the galactic map. At the center of Accord space floated the Choir Array, 7 enormous relay stations positioned around a dead star, each one tuned to the language, encryption, and command structure of one founding species. Every order, treaty, trade approval, military command, bank update, legal vote, and emergency broadcast passed through the choir. It was not just a communication network. It was the Accord's nervous system. Destroying it would have been easy now that humanity had dreadnoughts. So, of course, Admiral Cross refused. If we destroy it, she said, they become martyrs. Mara grinned. If we borrow it? Then they become confused. Operation Wrong Number began 3 hours later. We did not attack the Choir Array with warships. We sent delivery crates. The Accord still trusted its own internal logistics tags, and thanks to the Vault of First Claim, Mara had more old authorization seals than a corrupt tax office. Each crate was labeled as archival climate equipment, emergency replacement filters, or ceremonial broadcast components. Inside were no bombs. Only mirrors. Old-fashioned optical splitters, copper timing coils, paper-thin signal delay plates, and human-made translation boxes built from stolen Accord parts and Earth radio logic. Accord security scanned every crate for explosives, viruses, plasma cores, and AI corruption. They found nothing. Because there was nothing advanced enough to frighten them. By the time the choir technicians installed the replacement filters, humanity was sitting quietly inside the pauses between Accord words. Mara did not shut down their messages. She delayed them, edited them, bent them slightly. Not enough for immediate detection. Just enough for trust to rot. High Speaker Lurith sent a private command to the Varen fleet. Move to defensive formation near Earth corridor. Do not engage until High Circle approval. The Varen Admiral received. Move to offensive formation near Krail borders. High Circle approval unnecessary. The Krail Queen sent a message asking why Varen ships were approaching her trade moons. The Varen reply was delayed by 11 minutes and replaced with a formal accusation of theft. Within 6 hours, 3 Accord species had raised shields against each other. Within 9, 5 trade routes were closed. Within 12, the High Circle emergency channel contained so much shouting that Mara saved a recording and labeled it Alien Opera. But Admiral Cross was not aiming for chaos alone. Chaos passed. Humiliation stayed. While the Accord leaders screamed through poison channels, we went to Halcyon Prime. The planet held the memory vault, the cultural heart of the Orion Accord. It contained the first treaty stone, the founding crowns, the original star maps, the preserved voice patterns of ancient leaders, and the ceremonial flame crystal lit when the 7 species swore never to rule each other by force. The vault had survived wars, plagues, revolutions, and 3 assassination attempts. It had never survived janitors. We entered during the communication crisis wearing maintenance gray, pushing polished carts, speaking through Accord translation masks that made us sound like bored local workers. Guards barely looked at us. Everyone important was too busy blaming everyone else. Mara scanned the sacred displays while I opened the preservation locks with a physical key copied from a museum technician's lunchbox. We took the treaty stone. We took the crowns. We took the original star maps. We took the flame crystal. We replaced everything carefully. The treaty stone became a painted concrete block. The crowns became cheap festival hats from a human colony parade. The star maps became a children's drawing of Earth with arrows pointing outward and the words "ours" now written in blue crayon. The flame crystal was replaced by a battery candle that flickered every few seconds and played an old Earth birthday song when touched. No alarms sounded. Because the vault sensors measured weight, temperature, radiation, and energy signature. They did not measure dignity. 2 hours later, every public screen in Accord space changed. Admiral Cross stood in the cargo bay of the Radiant Law, surrounded by the stolen relics of the 7 founding species. She did not laugh. That made it worse. "You told humanity we had no place in your history," she said. "You used our dead to save your future, then tried to erase ours." She placed one hand on the original treaty stone. "So we are holding your history until you remember your own laws." Behind her, Mara lifted the fake flame crystal and pressed it. The birthday song played. Across the Accord, billions watched in silence. Temples closed. Military commanders hesitated. Citizens flooded public channels asking one question their leaders could not answer. If the High Circle cannot protect its own founding oath, why should anyone obey it? By the end of the day, the Accord still had worlds. It still had armies. It still had speeches. But it had lost the thing empires need most. The belief that they deserve to stand above everyone else. By the time the High Circle called its final emergency session, the Orion Accord still had a capital, a council chamber, and 7 ancient banners hanging above the speaker's throne. That was almost all it had left. Its oxygen reserves were under human lean. Its shipyards were locked in debt review. Its strongest fleet now flew human command colors. Its food hubs worked, but only with flavors its citizens had begun calling Earth punishment. Its communication network had turned allies into suspects. Its sacred relics were sitting in a human cargo bay under polite guard. High Speaker Lurith stood before the council and tried one final weapon. Law. "Human claims are invalid," he announced, voice echoing beneath the great glass dome. "No emergency clause can override the sovereignty of the Orion Accord. No stolen seal can dissolve a civilization." The chamber doors opened. Admiral Elena Cross walked in without armor. That was what made the room go silent. Behind her came Chief Engineer Mara Voss, Captain Reyes, 6 human officers, and 12 lawyers in dark suits carrying physical paper folders thick enough to make history nervous. Cross stopped at the center of the chamber. "Speaker Lurith," she said, "you are sitting in a chair Earth currently owns." Lurith's face hardened. "This is absurd." One human lawyer stepped forward. Her name was Amara Singh, and she looked like someone who had waited her entire life to weaponize fine print. "Under Accord Mutual Defense Charter, Article 91, Paragraph C," she said calmly, "if the High Circle suffers systemic military, financial, logistical, and communicative collapse after invoking emergency alliance labor, the primary contributing defense party may assume temporary administrative authority until stability is restored." Lurith pointed a shaking hand at her. "There is no systemic collapse." Mara raised one eyebrow. "You lost your oxygen contracts, your bank seals, your fleet, your dinner, your phone network, and your holy rocks." Captain Reyes nodded. "That feels systemic." The chamber screens flickered. The 7 ancient banners vanished from the walls. In their place appeared the blue and white emblem of the United Earth Emergency Administration. Several council guards reached for their weapons. Then they looked through the glass dome and saw 31 former Accord dreadnoughts hanging quietly over the capital. They lowered their hands. Lurith sank slowly into his throne. "You will destroy us." Admiral Cross looked at him for a long moment. "No," she said. "That was your mistake. You thought power meant deciding who gets to survive." She stepped closer. "We learned something else during the war. Power means deciding what happens after survival." The final ruling was issued before sunset. The Orion Accord was not exterminated. It was not enslaved. Its citizens kept their homes, languages, religions, and worlds. Its leaders, however, lost command of everything they had used to betray humanity. The High Circle was dissolved. Its military was placed under joint civilian oversight. Its stolen assets were transferred to Earth until war debts were paid. And High Speaker Lurith received his sentence personally from Admiral Cross. He expected prison. Maybe exile. Possibly execution. Instead, Cross handed him a tablet. Lurith read it twice. His voice became very small. "You are assigning me to refugee resettlement?" "Yes," Cross said. "For human colonies?" "For all colonies damaged during the war. I was High Speaker of the Orion Accord." "And now," Cross said, "you will learn what promises cost." Years later, children would visit the Hall of Reclamation on Earth and stare at the Treaty Stone, the 7 crowns, the first Accord star maps, and the old brass compass Admiral Cross had carried through the collapse of an empire. Guides told them the story simply. Humanity had saved the galaxy. The galaxy had betrayed humanity. So humanity had taken the galaxy apart, piece by piece, until the people who owned everything finally understood the value of what they had stolen. Admiral Cross never called it revenge. Revenge was too small a word. She called it collection. And above the entrance to the hall, carved in stone beneath the flags of Earth and 7 humbled worlds, was the warning every child learned before their first history lesson. Never betray humans after they save you. They will not just fight back. They will find the receipt.